thing. If the Earth was on a total axis point and not tilted, you would get more of that round. But since the Earth is just tilted enough, when it kicks right there, you see the hula hoop? It's not going across, it's going... So this, in a sense, might be proving my theory with the electrons, because if the electrons are doing the same thing, see how you're getting that spin?
Yeah.
So when some of these vortexes or whatever get so big, it kicks up and goes airborne into hurricanes and whatever. Same thing. So that's why you keep seeing all these spins. I think they believe that with the equator being longer than the North Pole, that there's a shorter rotation up top, longer rotation, and that's there's changes in wavelength also create the spin, but that's why they're saying that the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere have counterclockwise and clockwise rotation when you flush the toilet. So that's their pretense and stuff. But what if this is what's showing up, is this kind of fluids? And I think this is why it proves too, one telltale sign of special needs is the foot or the hand or the back of the neck. The reason the plate reacts more violently with the fluids is, again, look at where I have it. I don't have a counterbalance and rotation here because I'm using two pivot points, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's the same thing. Remember when I say the heel, when it does this, where it doesn't counter?
Yeah.
Guaranteed special needs, same with the hands or back of the heads. That's why I'm always saying our kids move from the back of their heads, right? Versus, so if I do this, right, it totally changes how the fluid moves around the plate versus if I just teeter-totter the thing. So same thing too when I'm doing with the bowl, but the bowl I'm going to hold differently. I'm not going to get so much of this kind of thing, but you can see where not only does the wave start to kick up but almost crest when I do something like this versus, again, the slosh versus just going into this. So I get it when someone sees this kind of thing here, when the ball doesn't go with the gravity, when there's enough water. They're thinking that this ball is lighter than the water, therefore, but I don't think that that's just the case. So you can really see it in the wine glass, right? If I do round and round, do you see the momentum? Do you see how it would throw electrons? Do you know what I mean? Right? Versus if I do a hula hoop, it actually gets steadier. See how it's not as violent versus here. See how there's more that it throws it out. It doesn't hold the fluid into place, it goes out. So same thing here if I'm doing it this way with counterbalance. So that's why counterbalance is so important, because it's countering, creating the second hula hoop. So it's not that I just have, right? So it's creating that centrifugal force in a sense, but most people think of centrifugal force as this. And that's why this won't work as a space station to make gravity. Because if you're doing this, then you're only having the one opposing factors. But when you have this, you have the two opposing movements, and that's where it shows up in fluids, not just from muscle control. No, but this, see what I mean? When this goes on, when that counterbalance is there, right? In a sense, there's two opposing forces. The water is going one way, where the movement's going the other way, right? But if I'm just doing this, I don't have that same force, right? So when I'm running and pumping and doing all of these things, right? See, I have all these different engines creating all this movement, or at least the power, the energy to drive the vehicle, which is the human body. But when I'm throwing a hand and I'm throwing this and I have the spasticity with CP, where's the energy source? And that's why these kids burn fuel like a because they're not recreating anything. They don't have like solar power and stuff, which is what this perpetual energy does. And so when they're low toned, then they're just flop, flop. And then it's really so much energy to get this flop to go upright again. And that's where everyone thinks this is muscle-based, to bring this glass back up, versus what I do and say, but what about the counter? And the system starts coming into play. So it's not only about the counterbalance, but the counterbalance with the two opposing forces that creates that stability, which is therefore a gyroscope. Do you see how she's just tossing her head right now? She's doing this and this. So on top of that, when the eyes get all wonky, look at what it's doing again to that centrifugal force. That's why the vision's so important with human development, because it creates that kind of movement. I get it, you can be totally blind and have your PhD. I'm not saying that it's total for intelligence, but that blind person will never be able to be an energy source. So when I'm working, let's say, with the head, right? Most people apply any kind of modality this way, right? When I touch someone, if I were to touch someone like this, or use what's worse, this, let's say, this thumb as an access point, and went like, oh, look, I'm loosening up the neck. That's why it doesn't take a fold in the central nervous system. Because loosen, all these kind of terms are not a vocabulary that the brain uses. That's why I keep going back to where I'm getting more and more. Me saying this is right and left is for you and me. But my system doesn't go, okay, Michelle, right hand over there. It would naturally gravitate towards the efficient motion, despite having those kind of descriptions.
But when you talk about the earth axis being a little tilted,
right?
Are you talking about is that equivalent to your hands not going in directly and going at an angle as well, or?
Right, but I'm also throwing that movement. So when I work, let's say, with the head, right, not only am I working with the eyes almost being like little earths, and then the head's being a big earth, like within, right? But I'm looking to see if at the same time, like the bottom of my pelvis is the bottom of the wine glass.
Understood. Okay.
So when I'm working on my head, right, so if I just touched it and did this, someone can say, oh, look, I'm doing counterbalance. But you can tell that you aren't because the fluid's reacting. But when I do this, right, I immediately go after, and my fluid just totally stabilizes.
Okay.
So when you touch in this way, it immediately, because it goes with physics, it goes with the system dynamics, and all of this starts to gel and acts as one. So I think it's important, you don't have to be a master at it, to understand what's going on in nature, earth and all this sort of stuff, as the body goes after it. However, that's why I think we're breaking down. The more someone does, let's say, computer and this, that, and the other, and that anger or picking up their cell phone, you know what I mean, kind of thing, they're turning their bodies into more mechanical, or like this, and therefore they can't react to the stimulus around them, and their system breaks down. Just like I keep saying, having an underinflated tire on a car, the car could be worth $2 million, been handmade, but if the tire's off, the system will start breaking down that car. So the more mechanical we make ourselves, up until now I was thinking artificial hip joints, but what if it's just our beings?
Well, from like a toddler who has infinite energy, as they grow and become more mechanical,
right,
the energy dissipates?
The energy dissipates, but also when the energy hits the system, it breaks the system down. So like me, even though I'm not skinny and muscular and this, that, and the other, the fact that I'm so learning how to move with all of this, I am, quote, very healthy and very able to move. I do believe that now my system has to learn how to introduce stresses, because we're not meant to have no stress either.
Got it.
And I'm going into a realm of very little stress.
Right. Get it.
Stress meaning from either, most people think of stress as mental, but of me just, I don't lift, most people lift weights or they go, and whatever, and I'm just going, oh, look, So I can take even grown adults with developmental problems that are violent, but they come into my system and that dissipates and their system starts to equalize.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like I'm bubble wrap.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah.
So when that happens, so to sit there and approach someone like if you're going to fix them, but that's what we do with computers and all of this sort of stuff. We are working more for the robots than we are for our physical self. So to look more and more at how that body, and this is where I do the detailed work. I'm doing this. Right? So I'm affecting the inner system, but people see me at the rim of the glass. So, and then two, detailed work is like this. So when I'm putting cupcake back on the table, see, this is what I'm working on, let's say through the jaw, so she can eventually go as if the cup was originally unstable until I find her base, right? And then she can stand. And it might be just for a second, and it goes, right? And then I have to do it this way, right? But I have to let her know from all different angles that in this environment, this is her base. But where I'm also different than most people is I'm also messing with the base this way.
Yeah.
So it comes up and it comes down. This is where when I do like the floating baby on Omni,
She's right there.
right? So it goes up and it comes down. So when all that's happening, even that, I was able to catch it because I can feel it all through the system and react it without the water falling on me. But eventually I can either go down as far as this and bring it back.
And you do it so delicately that the kids start feeling
So
that.
see,
and
here I can do
correcting
here
themselves. Yeah.
and here.
Got it.
But if they can do this, then they can walk,
Yeah.
right?
Totally. Yeah.
But if they can't do that in the sit kind of thing, or on the table where I feel that in their system, so now what I need is a wine glass. Maybe they have them in a trick shop where this is almost like elastic here, like you think you have a wine glass and it goes whoop. So if I bring the base down too low, let's say, and this were to fall, like the head control, right? Then I know I've gone too far. But if I can use things like that to show how I can go back now and, let's say, bend the stem and bring that back into bringing that base back in. So you know how I said the other day that I don't believe electrons orbit? In the sense that everybody thinks that it's this. Like the Earth's orbit,
Yeah.
it's in a constant field. I think, let's see how good my hula hoop days are, that the electrons go around and create momentum for the cells in this kind of dynamics. So they're swinging, so like if I had a ball, it's coming out and shooting. That's why I think radium and stuff like that loses there's too many hula hoops and it starts just shooting them out. That's why, to get near radiation, I don't think you'd have the same throw or energy if the orbit was at just this status. And also, it would be hard to heat up. I think this is why Feynman referred to them as jiggly atoms. Because if I had a bunch of hula hoops, now obviously if I have 2 or 3 or 4 of them, the more and more I have, I stabilize my system, which I keep trying to show you guys on the momentum, right? So do you see her stability where I have to do, because I put my hula hoop in? That's what I'm saying. So to assume when you don't know what a hula hoop is possible of doing, But I think that's how atoms spin electrons and protons over, is like this, not in a constant orbit. Now she's only doing now one hula hoop. I don't know if she'll.
Is she in Phoenix? Didn't I say Phoenix something? Oh, that's cool. That'd be a fun class to go to.
Can you see it when the LED cup breaks up? Do you see how that wouldn't be a proper orbit? When it's just that.
Yeah.
It's gotta be. Can you see it more now?
Yeah, that one's really good.
But you see how when she has those orbits away from her, it's actually unstable.
And she's doing so much to generate
Right.
through her arms. and
Right. Whereas if her atoms are just, like right now she's just playing more with the lights. Come on,
Yeah.
put it around your butt. Let's see, that's amazing. I love when they do that.
Yeah.
But also when it's around her, the interaction can happen more. There, so, see, again,
Yeah. There's like no effort.
Yeah. And the interaction she can do, which creates that perpetual motion. Whereas when there's a fixed orbit, almost like a string, she has to control it.